Good evening. The Koreans are very much interested in understanding the secret to the Jewish genius. The Jews have won some 25% of the Nobel Prizes. They have made so many of the discoveries. So they want to understand, where do the Jews get this intelligence from? And they were doing research and they found out, well, the Jews have the Talmud, the Gomorrah. And by studying Talmud, that makes Jews smart. So they brought a TV camera crew to Israel, into the biggest yeshiva in Israel. And I believe there's a video online showing how they're interviewing yeshiva bochurim, the students, and the faculty of the yeshiva to try to understand of this special way of thinking of Jewish law that is developed through studying the Talmud. And in fact, in the Talmud specifically, the Mishnah says in Baba Basra that if you really want to become smart, study money matters, civil law, the laws of money issues. When you study that, you become smart. So I don't know, frankly, if this is going to help the Koreans to become so smart, but certainly it is true that the Jewish people have been analyzing and debating and studying Talmud and the laws of the Talmud for thousands of years. Before the Talmud was actually put into writing, about the year 500, and the Mishnah in about the year 200, we've been studying and debating the laws of the Talmud, and specifically the laws, issues of money, since biblical times, which were more than 3,000 years ago. But we're going to be learning today in chapter 14 of Inyana Shel Teres Chasidus, of the Rebbe's work, the Essence of Chasidus, where the Rebbe explains that though we must use our logic, our human logic, to understand mishpatim, laws, civil law, and laws of issues of money, which are not based, but which are constructed in a form, in a logical form, and based on a lot of logical arguments, but in essence, like all of the Torah, they transcend logic. And we're now going to start the 14th chapter where this point is made. We're studying about the different interpretations of the Moida'ani, of the morning prayer, where we say, "Thank you, Hashem, for returning my soul to me." And we learned in an earlier chapter the 4 interpretations of this verse, of this "Thank you, Hashem," and also the interpretation and the focus of Chasidus on this verse. We have a total of 5 ways of looking at this verse. Concerning the interpretation of what he calls drash, which for all practical purposes today we're going to call it the halachic understanding of that verse. So the Rebbe brought a halakhah that from this "Thank you, Hashem," we learn a halakhah concerning if someone gave you something to hold for them, what is called in Hebrew a pekodem. So I am holding some of you. You're traveling and you gave me your candlesticks, or you gave me your car, and I have to watch it for you. So there's an obligation for me to return that object. And what's novel over here, and what we learn from the Moida'ani prayer is that this obligation for me to return this logic and keep my word to you is so strong that even if you owe me money because of a debt or because of work, and you're not paying me a debt that you owe me, now I cannot withhold the object, the pekon that's on deposit by me. Because since I took that object on trust, and there's a mitzvah for me to return that object, I have to return that object notwithstanding other outstanding debts that you have. And logically I could justify, well, if you're not going to pay me your debts, and what you owe me, I'm going to hold back this because I'm going to hold back the object that I'm holding on trust. So the mitzvah is not to hold it back. And now the Rebbe is going to analyze this mitzvah, this halakhah, and see what Hasidic insight there is in this. Now this halakhah we learn also from the same verse that we learned Moida Ali, that just like Hashem returns our soul to us, even though we may have some outstanding spiritual debt with Hashem because of our behavior and our failings, so he has this account that we may be very much in the red, and an argument can be made, does Hashem have to give us back our Neshama in the morning? Maybe it's time for him to collect and foreclose on all that debt that we have, that we owe him because of our failings. And yet Hashem gives us our Neshama notwithstanding our outstanding debt. From there we learn, one of the places that we learn is that, listen, that if you're holding on trust something that another human gave you, give it back to them. Don't hold it back because of your outstanding debt. So now let's go to the 14th chapter. There's an insight and an understanding that the Hasidic interpretation gives to this. If one wants to go completely logical on this law, it's a matter of civil law concerning money matters. If someone wants to go totally logically with logic arguments, it doesn't make sense. It's not understood. Where's this logic? Someone else owes me money. He hasn't been paying me. Perhaps he's been ignoring me, and he's been denying the debt. And now I have something of his that he deposited by me. I have a hold on something of his of value, can make good the debt that he owes me. Why is it forbidden to do so? Why shouldn't I utilize this opportunity to get paid for what is duly owed to me? Logic would argue that, listen, he owes me, now I owe him. We're even. So the Rebbe is asking a question on this law as far as logic and even fairness is concerned. And to emphasize the point, he brings another case, which is actually a Gomorrah, where someone stole something from someone else. In the Gomorrah, it's a case of a field. Someone took possession of a field, and he's denying the rightful owner. He has this, he has that, he has witnesses that he's lived there. But rightfully, it belongs to the original owner and not the thief who took possession of it. So the Gemara says, well, if he wants to do an underhanded way or shrewd way to get his field back, he asks someone else to buy the field from the thief. So now the thief wants to make money. He'll sell the field to this buyer, and once the thief is off the field, now the rightful owner can now open up a case against the buyer because he has proof that the field was his, and with the thief, he was a mafioso. He was scared to deal with him. He was scared he wouldn't listen to the judges. So therefore, he found a way where someone else will buy it, and now he's going after the buyer, and he may get his field back. It's an underhanded way if he was the one who advised the buyer to do it. And that's what the Rebbe discusses. You're not supposed to give bad advice to some people. But legally, if somehow he maneuvers the things in a way that the thief gets it out of his hand and someone else gets it, and through that he can get it back, it is okay to do that. The details are discussed in Gomorrah and in Choshen Mishpat and in the Code of Jewish Law. But the bottom line is, we do find in Halakhah that you can do sometimes something a bit underhanded to make what's right. So over here, yes, it's a bit underhanded because someone else gave you that object on trust that you're going to return it, but hey, that person owes you money and he's not paying what he owes you. So, what is good for him is good for you. And why would it be illogical and wrong for you to make good on that? And the Rebbe says, to really understand that, you need Chasidus. You need the Chasidus focus on Torah to appreciate that. Because the Hasidic focus is that the essence of our Neshama is the Yechidah, is that godly spark that transcends logic and emotions and the norms. And therefore in Torah there's also the Yechidah of Torah. There's the essence of Torah which is beyond and transcends logic. And that is sometimes felt in even the laws that are almost completely logical, like in the money matters. But even in these laws, there are certain points and situations in these laws where the Halakhah and the Torah says is, you know what? These laws are very logical, but in this point, it transcends logic. It becomes a mitzvah like any other religious obligation. So although logically you should be able to hold it back, but it's a mitzvah and a religious obligation, so to say, to give it back to him to fulfill Hashem's will, and perhaps to you it transcends logic. And this is a Hasidic focus on a halacha that is logical. The Rebbe in the next paragraph says, Chasidus explains shekol ha-mitzvahs gam ha-mitzvah sheyesh lehem tam ikram uratzta l'shalom matan. Chasidus says that even the most logical Talmudic reasoning, in essence, is Hashem's will. And since the essence of Hashem transcends reason and logic, and His will transcends logic, so that just like in the mitzvahs of the Torah, there are mitzvahs that have no logical reason. And the only purpose of that mitzvah is to show the commitment that a Jew has to Hashem, a commitment that transcends logic, a commitment that is soul to soul. So too, this is felt even in logical mitzvahs. And the essence of all mitzvahs, whether it is not to steal and not to kill and to be honest and to be fair and not to make people jealous of you, all of the mitzvahs, not to have jealousy, to be humble, mitzvahs of character, mitzvahs of practice, mitzvahs of thought, all the mitzvahs, even mitzvahs which philosophers and thinkers and even the regular person says, oh, this mitzvah makes so much sense. The Jewish way makes so much sense. Our traditions make so much sense. True, they do make so much sense. But the essence of it all is that it is the will of Hashem, and the source of it transcends reason. Shalachin gam ha-mitzvahs de mishpatim, even the mitzvahs of law, the mitzvahs of law, that all civilizations came up with some system of law and order so that a sane society could exist in a civilized way. There's logic for all of that. But nevertheless, those same laws in our culture we have to know that these laws too came from Hashem, and the essence of this law is that it's the will of Hashem, and just like Hashem transcends logic, these laws are really there because Hashem said to us to do that. We have to fulfill the mitzvahs that are logical with the same commitment and surrender to Hashem's will, Kabbalah Soil, accepting the will of Hashem, the yoke of God, like we do the mitzvahs that have no logical reasoning. Nevertheless, even though these mitzvahs also have logic to it, these mitzvahs that have also logic, the mitzvahs that have logic, like civil law and all the laws of money matters, they have a reasoning. So Hashem wants us to study and understand this and to debate it and analyze it with our human intelligence. That's part of the mitzvah itself. In fact, this is also a mitzvah to use our mind. And perhaps this is the secret of Jewish genius in the most practical way. Study Gomorrah, study Talmud, study Jewish law, sharpen your mind with Talmudic acrobatics, so to say. And that is also Hashem's will, but that's just part of the story. We have to use our mind and our human intelligence for that. But nevertheless, we have to know that in essence, it is the will of Hashem that makes this mitzvah. The Rebbe emphasized this point once when he was speaking about Germany during the 20th century. In the beginning of the 1900s, Germany was the center of culture and of science. It had the most advanced universities and thinkers, and the sciences were developed there. The best scientists that later made the atom bomb were studying in Germany, but then they were expelled from Germany, most of them because they were Jewish. But which country were these advances in science happening? Germany. And they were cultured. They were gentlemen. A German gentleman would open the door for a lady. So they were a very advanced culture. And what happened to them? What happened is they had a diabolical leader, and they followed him, and they became the greatest monsters and barbarians of history. So here, this civilization suddenly committed such murder and such plunder and theft and cruelty in the worst way. What happened to this civilization? Well, the Rebbe says that their whole culture and civilization was based on a logic. And their logic told them, well, it's proper to say good morning, and it's proper to be kind to dogs, and it's proper to have a certain etiquette and behavior, and to study and to become very intelligent in the sciences and in philosophy and music and all of human culture. So it was all based on their human intelligence and logic. But when their logic turned around, so these same thinkers and this same people, their logic said, well, Jews are subhumans and other cultures are less than them, and really the whole world owes them debt, and therefore they are going to plunder all of Europe, go into Russia and into Africa. Everything belongs to them. Their logic justified it. If all of your morality is based on logic, it is a morality that can change, because that same human being or human society can decide, well, times have changed. What was immoral 10 years ago is now moral. Why? Because, well, we decided, we had a vote. We asked celebrities, we ask politicians, and now it goes. So the Rebbe said the 10 Commandments were given to us by Hashem. Do not kill. Why is it so important? Man doesn't know not to kill. And the answer is, look at Germany. They also knew not to kill. If you would ask Germany from the 1900s until 1930s, oh, of course it's terrible to kill another human being. But then they decided that it's okay to kill. This one yes, the other one no. So if it's just based on logic, it doesn't have value. And that's why Hashem said the 10 Commandments to mankind, to say, I say to you, don't kill. And just like Hashem doesn't change, His laws don't change. I say don't commit adultery. I say do not steal. I say don't covet other person's property, his wife, his wealth. I say that. It's not depending on your understanding. You're not to define morality. You're supposed to accept a God-given morality. And this is over here in this law. In this law, we're being told that money matters, logic, dinimominous, that make Jews smart. This too is in essence Hashem's will. And we have to do it not only because we understand it, but because it is Hashem's will. And the Rebbe continues, "Mekiva shekala mitzvahs yiyanim hu ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shehu yizbarach haratzon echad." A fundamental point in Jewish philosophy, and it's emphasized in Kabbalah and Chasidus, is that Hashem and all of His qualities are one. The Rambam writes about it. So He and His will are one. Can you understand Hashem? No. He transcends logic. He's beyond logic. So to His will and His mitzvahs are beyond logic, because He and His will is one. When we speak about Hashem, can you say, well, Hashem's existence, there's a purpose in it. Why does He exist? Do we say there's reasoning behind it? And do we debate it? Do we analyze it? No, we don't ask why. Similarly, Hashem's mitzvahs. Hashem says, do not steal. So, yes, our human mind says, do not steal because it's wrong to take away someone else's things. Or, if you're going to steal from him, he's going to steal from you, and therefore the society will never be able to exist. These are illogical reasons not to steal. And what the Rebbe is saying over here, you know why you shouldn't steal? Because Hashem said don't steal. Hashem is beyond logic. He transcends logic. And our obligation not to steal is not because of a certain motive or a certain logic or a certain argument. Our reason not to steal, in essence, is because Hashem's will. Now, if you want to understand it as well in human logic, there's also human reasoning and logic behind it. And we have a mitzvah to understand the human reasoning. But in essence, we have to accept it as divine will. Considering what we're studying now, mitzvah hashavas pekadon, the mitzvah of returning something that is on trust. Mataras ha-mitzvah eine rak b'shvil tevas ha-mafkid, sheyuz lo mimoyne b'shleimus. The purpose of this is not to maintain trust towards someone who gave you something. To be a man who is trustworthy, or to do it because we don't want the person who gave it to you to feel bad. That's also true. We're not supposed to make others feel bad. And also you have to keep your word, because then you're being dishonest and it makes you bad. There are good reasons for that mitzvah. But the absolute and the ultimate, so to say, reason for the mitzvah is just because Hashem said. You want to know what's the purpose of the mitzvah? What is the goal of the mitzvah? The essential reason for this is because Hashem said that. Not because it's proper or honest or trustworthy. And that explains our original question. But he owes me something. So I have something that he trusted me with. So I have his candlestick, I have his car, and now I could hold it back because he owes me money of that same value. So you're saying a good argument. But Hashem says, I gave you a mitzvah. It's not about evening out the deficit one of you has towards the other. It's not about balancing who owes whom. It's about Hashem's mitzvah. Now Hashem says, I'm telling you, this is what I want you to do. In this case, if he gave it to you on trust, you have to give it to him back. It could be a different case will be different. Let's say someone owes you money. And then your car crashed into his car, and now you owe him money. So then you could say, well, he owes me, I owe him. We're going to even it out. Then you could say, I'm not going to pay you. He could say he's not going to pay you. One could say, well, I'm not going to pay you because you owe me. That's all. When you have a differentiation and a balance, because you owe him money and he owes you money because he caused damage or whatever it may be. But when it comes to a pekudin, where someone gave you something at deposit of trust, there's a special mitzvah, give it back and don't make any counterclaims. Now where does this idea come from? That we have to do mitzvahs because this is only Hashem's God's will? This is a Hasidic attitude. Because it comes from a place that's beyond logic. It comes in a place in our soul, the Yechida, which is our essential connection with Hashem, which transcends logic and human calculations and so on. If we're talking about the lower levels of the Neshama, the lower levels of the Neshama, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida, so that without Yechida, they are about our action, about our feelings, about our intelligence, about our will. They have a certain form. And their take of the mitzvahs are also limited to that form. So therefore, they're not an absolute and complete absolute connection and commitment. The nefesh is action. Well, my behavior, your behavior. Feelings, well, what about your feelings? Seichel, Neshama is about intelligence. Intelligence, you can make intellectual arguments to justify holding it back. So therefore, since these levels of the Neshama, they relate to levels of Torah understanding that are also in the form of behavior and feelings and thinking, so their connection to Hashem is also how Hashem is already in some kind of a spiritual form. Is the Yechida. Chasidus emphasized the Yechida, that level of Neshama that is only presence of God. It's the level of Neshama that has the spark of God in it, and its awareness, and its feeling, and its existence is totally God-focused. So therefore, there are no questions asked. Hashem says, "Return this article." Then I return the article. Well, what about my logical questions? There's no why. It's what does Hashem want? And that's what He does. And here, again, we see how through the Chasidus, the Yechida, it not only is a teaching and a lesson on itself, the Hasidic way, but how also the Chasidus enlightens a halakhah in the section of Jewish law that is the most logical and the most intellectual. And here too we say, well, in essence, it's only about Hashem's raw will, how he transcends logic, transcends time and space. And that is what Chasidus focuses on, the Yechidah. Good night.